Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, and for those of you who are new here, thanks for joining me. I generally post tutorials for items of clothing, but every now and then I need to either get rid of leftover yarn or I need a change of scenery. With this tutorial, the first applies. I'll be making this crochet sling bag using leftover yarn. There's 3 parts to this pattern. The first is the circular flower motif. We will work 2 of them. And then it's the strap. And lastly, we'll put them all together. For this tutorial, as I said, I use leftover yarn. The weight of yarn that I used was a category 3, which is a light worsted or a double knit. All 3 colors are of the same weight. For my hook, I used the recommended hook on the yarn label, which is a 4mm hook. You will also need a yarn or wool needle and a pair of scissors. If you haven't already, please do consider subscribing. That way you never get to miss out on any of my tutorials, and you also help me help this channel grow. To those of you who have already subscribed, a huge thank you. So let's get on with this tutorial, and I hope you enjoy it. We'll begin with these crochet rounds with this flower motif. We'll start off here with our first color, and then we're working with 2 skeins of yarn at the same time in these 2 different colors. One to form the flower motif, and the second skein is for the outside of the motif. Okay, let's begin right here. Form a slip knot, chain 6. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Slip stitch into that first chain to join and form a little ring. We'll now work all our stitches into this little ring. Round 1, it's chain 1, single crochet into the ring. So insert your hook into that ring, pull up a loop, yarn over and go through 2 loops on the hook. Continue on with single crochets until you've worked 12 single crochets into this ring. So we've worked our first single crochet, and here's the second, third, I've worked 12 single crochets. Make certain to count your stitches before you complete this round. To complete the round, into that first single crochet, slip stitch to join. Round 2, chain 3. Chain 3 counts as our first stitch, in this case a double crochet. Into that same stitch from where chain 3 comes out of, work a double crochet. So it's yarn over, insert your hook into that same stitch from where chain 3 comes out of, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook. So you've worked 2 stitches into that first stitch. Then you continue on working 2 double crochets into each of these stitches. So that's 1 and 2, all into 1 stitch. I've worked my way to the end of round 2. At this point, I've worked 23 stitches, my chain 3 counting as my first stitch. Now for my 24th stitch, which will be worked into the same stitch as my 23rd stitch, this is where I'm going to bring in my change of color. To work the last stitch, you'll yarn over, insert your hook into that last stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over and go through 2 loops on your hook, and then with 2 loops left on the hook, you can bring in your change of color. At this point, you want to keep your tail end to the wrong side. Now this is the second change of color. For this change, we will form the flower motif. And then you'll just bring in your change of color and complete your stitch with that change of color. Now here, keep your tail end to the back and then into the third chain from chain 3, slip stitch to join. Just tighten up on that tail end. You can also cut off on your first color. So that's that color, and I'll just cut off, leaving a tail end to help weave it in. You no longer need that first color. For round 3, we will begin this flower motif right here. So it works with 2 yarn colors here. We'll work a few stitches and then we'll change for our next change of color. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3. Chain 3 will always count as our first stitch. Into the next stitch, work 2 double crochets. So that was 1 and 2. Into the next stitch, work 1 double crochet. When working this last stitch right here, you leave your last 2 loops unworked and you'll bring in your change of color. So complete your stitch with that change of color. Now at this point, you want to make certain that the tail end from the first color remains at the front. We're going to work this into our stitch as we're working. So you can bring this along your stitches like I'm doing here. Then into the next stitch, work a double crochet. Into the next stitch, work a double crochet. This time you're working a double crochet that is left unfinished. So it's left with 2 loops on your hook. And when you change colors, this is how you would do it. So it will always be your last stitch left unfinished. And then you bring this yarn forward like so, and you'll pick up on your first color, yarn that through to complete the stitch. And then again, we're continuing on with our pattern. It's our 4 double crochets in the first color. So it's 1 double crochet into the next stitch, and at the same time I'm holding my second color in line with my stitches so as to hide that length of yarn into the stitch as I'm working. So it's 1 double crochet into the next stitch, work 2 double crochets. That's 1 and 2. Into the next stitch, work 1 double crochet, leaving this stitch unfinished so that you can pick up on your third color. So you'll bring that forward, you'll pick up on your third color, complete the stitch, and then move this along your stitches so that you can hide this length of yarn. So into the next stitch, work a double crochet. Into the next stitch, work a double crochet, leaving the stitch unfinished. You will bring that forward, complete your stitch with the change of color, move this in line with your stitches so that you can hide that length of yarn. And then again, you're repeating the pattern with 1 double crochet into the next stitch, 2 double crochets into the next stitch. That was 1 and 2, and then 1 double crochet into the next stitch. However, you work the stitch left unfinished with 2 loops on your hook. Bring this forward, complete your stitch with the change of color, and then you're repeating your pattern as you've done here. So it's 2 double crochets in your change of color, and then it's 4 double crochets in the next change of color, working that center 2 double crochets into 1 stitch. So continue on to the end of the round. I've worked my way to the end of round 3. For my last stitch, I've worked an unfinished double crochet. At this point, I'll change my color, but when you get to the end of the round, keep your tail end to the back. This is the only time you'll keep your tail end to the back. Then you complete your stitch with your change of color, and now here you can slip stitch into the 3rd chain from chain 3 to join. While you slip stitching, make sure that you bring in your tail end to hide it into that stitch. Now again, we're hiding our tail ends as we work. So here's my tail end. I've brought it forward. Here it is on the wrong side. For round 4, it's chain 3, 1, 2, 3. Before moving on, you'll notice that your yarn gets tangled. So you've got to make certain that after every round, or wherever you feel that you need to untangle your yarn before moving on. That just makes it easier, because it can be really frustrating having to work with tangled yarn. So I've untangled my yarn and I'm ready to move on. Into the same stitch as chain 3, work a double crochet. So you've got 2 double crochets worked into 1 stitch. That's the chain 3 and the double crochet. Into the next stitch, work a double crochet. Into the next stitch, work a double crochet. Into the next stitch, work 2 double crochets. So that's 1. And then for the second double crochet, I'll work the stitch unfinished. And then I'll bring that forward. I'll pick up on my change of color to complete my stitch, and I'll move this in line with my stitches. Into the next stitch, work a double crochet. Into the next stitch, work an unfinished double crochet. Bring that forward, pick up on my next change of color to complete the stitch. So the stitch pattern is into the next stitch, work 2 double crochets. That's 1 and 2, all into the 1 stitch. Into the next stitch, work a double crochet. Into the next stitch, work a double crochet. Into the next stitch, work 2 double crochets. There's 1 and 2. So if you look at it now, we're increasing on this color right here. So initially worked 4 double crochets for that round, and now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Work 2 double crochets, 1 double crochet, 1 double crochet, and 2 double crochets. So yes, for the last stitch you will have to work it unfinished so that you can change your yarn color and then continue on with your stitch pattern. It will be 2 double crochets in this change of color. And then for the change of color, you leave that unfinished and continue on with your pattern. It's 2 double crochets into the next stitch, a double crochet, 2 double crochets, and then with your change of color, it's a double crochet, a double crochet. Continue on to the end of the round. I've worked my way to the end of round 4. Here I worked my last stitch and I've left it undone, so I will pick up on my change of color. Remember, you'll take your tail end to the back right here, pick up on your change of color, bring that through, and then into the 3rd chain from chain 3, slip stitch to join, keeping that tail end from my previous change of color right in the center so that I can weave that through my stitch as I'm slip stitching. At the end of round 4, you must have 40 stitches. Round 5, chain 3, 1, 2, 3. Now here round 5 is a repeat of round 4. We'll be working 2 double crochets into our first stitch and into our last stitch with this change of color, and then we'll work 1 double crochet into each of those stitches. So for each of these you should have that will be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stitches that you worked into this portion of the pattern, and then you work 2 double crochets into your change of color, then it's an increase, double crochets, an increase, giving you 8 stitches, and then it's 2 double crochets. So that's really the pattern for round 5. So into that same stitch as chain 3, work a double crochet. That was your first increase, and then it's a double crochet into the next stitch, 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 and an increase into the next stitch. So that's your 2 double crochets into the 1 stitch. So here, if you look at it, it's an increase, and then it's 1, 2, 3, 4 double crochets and an increase. So that gives me that 8 double crochets. So you continue on with your stitch pattern, remembering that your last stitch needs to be worked unfinished so that you can bring in your change of color to work the 2 double crochets right here. Oops. Again, it's unfinished. So you continue on with the stitch pattern until you've worked your way to the end of the round. I've completed round 5. At the end of round 5, you must have 50 stitches. Round 6, chain 3, 1, 2, 3. Into the next 7 stitches, work 1 double crochet each. So that's 1, For my last stitch, I'll work it unfinished, and that was 7. So that's counting chain 3, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stitches in total. And then it's my change of color. Now we'll work our increases into this 2 double crochets. So into that first double crochet, work an increase, which is 2 stitches worked into the 1 stitch. Into the next stitch, work an increase, leaving your second stitch unfinished so that you can pick up on your change of color. You continue on with this stitch pattern, working 8 double crochets, and then it's your 2 increases until the end of the round. I've worked my way to the end of round 6. Here, make certain that you've ended off with 2 increases into those last 2 stitches, as I have done here. And there is no need to work an unfinished double crochet for my last stitch in this round, as I will be continuing on in the next round with the same yarn color. So here I can slip stitch into my 3rd chain from chain 3 to join. At the end of round 6, you must have 60 stitches. Round 7, chain 2, 1, 2. For my 3rd chain, to complete this chain 3, I will pick up on my change of color. Now here I've picked up on my next change of color, and I'll work 6 double crochets, 1 into each of the next 6 stitches. So that's 1, and for my 6th stitch, I'll work that unfinished, change the color of my yarn, and here I'm working 2 double crochets, 1 into each of the next 2 stitches, and then I'll work an increase, increase, a double crochet, and a double crochet. So here goes my first double crochet, my second, and then it's an increase into the next stitch. So that's 1 and 2, an increase into the next stitch. So that's 1 and 2, a double crochet into the next stitch, and a double crochet into the next stitch, working that as an unfinished double crochet. So then I'll go ahead and pick up on my change of color. I'll continue on with this stitch pattern, working 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 double crochets in this change of color, and then it's a double crochet, increase, increase, double crochet, and then it's my change of color and 6 double crochets. Continue on to the end of the round. I've worked my way to the end of round 7. When you get to the end, work your increases as you have been doing. So it's a double crochet, increase, increase, and then here's 1 double crochet to end off with. And then you can slip stitch to join. At the end of round 7, you must have 70 stitches. Round 8, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, work a double crochet into the next stitch. Work this double crochet unfinished as you'll be changing your color of the yarn. Into the next 4 stitches, work 1 double crochet each. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, leaving the last stitch unfinished so that you may pick up on your next color. Into the next 4 double crochets, work 1 double crochet each. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Then it's an increase. So that's 1, 2, an increase into the next stitch. That's 1, 2, and then into the next 4 stitches, work a double crochet each. 1, 2, 3, 4, leaving the last stitch unfinished so that you may pick up on your change of color. So that's the stitch pattern for round 8. You work 4 double crochets, and then with your change of color, it's 4 double crochets, an increase, increase, and 4 double crochets. I've worked my way to the end of round 8. So right at the end, I continued on. Here I've worked 4 double crochets, and then it was an increase, increase, and I worked 2 double crochets right there. So to end the round, slip stitch into the 3rd chain from chain 3 to join. At the end of round 8, you must have 80 stitches. Round 9, chain 3, into the next stitch, double crochet, into the next stitch, double crochet, work an unfinished double crochet here, change color, work 2 double crochets, 1 into each of the next 2 stitches. So that's 1 and 2, leaving the second double crochet unfinished so that you may change your color. Work 6 double crochets, 1 into each of the next 6 stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then you'll work an increase, an increase into the next stitch as well, six double crochets, 1 into each of the next 6 stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, leaving the last stitch unfinished so that you may pick up on your next color. And then you'll continue on with your stitch pattern. It's 2 double crochets into the next 2 stitches, and then you work your 6 double crochets with your change of color, an increase, increase, 6 double crochets, and then it's your 2 double crochets in the change of color. I've continued on with round 9. Here I am right at the end. So I finished off with that change of color. It was my 6 double crochets, and then it was an increase, increase, and I finished off with 3 double crochets after those increases. 1, 2, 3. I'll then slip stitch to join. At this point, you can cut off on your second yarn color, that tail end. We will be just working with our third color for the next round. Round 10, chain 3. Into the next 2 stitches, work double crochets. So that's 1 and 2. Now here we're working increases. We'll work our increases into these change of colors along these edges right here. And for the rest of the pattern, we'll work double crochets in between. So we'll work our increase here. And then it's an increase into the next stitch. Then you'll work double crochets right through. Here at this change of color, you'll work an increase and double crochets, and so on to the end of the round. I've worked my way to the end of round 10. I slip stitch to join. At the end of round 10, you must have 100 stitches. You can now fasten off, cut off on the excess. You will work 2 of these. Now we'll go ahead and weave in all these ends. When weaving in your ends, make certain to weave into the same color. So here I'm with the beige, so I'll weave it into the beige. Go back and forth into your stitches to lose these ends. Do the same with all your ends. To tighten up on that little gap that's formed at the center, you can pull on your tail end. To form the strap, begin with a slip knot, then chain 7. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Round 1 into the second chain from the hook, single crochet. So you insert your hook into that chain, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2 loops on your hook. Then continue on with single crochets into the remaining chains. Having started off with 7 chains, you should have 6 stitches. So it's always going to be 1 stitch less than the number of chains that you started off with. Round 2, chain 1 and turn. Here we're working single crochets into all stitches. Our first stitch will be the one where that chain 1 comes out of. So into that stitch, going right into the entire stitch. By that I mean you're going into both the loops from the stitch. Pull up a loop, yarn over, and go through 2 loops on the hook. So you continue on with single crochets into the remaining stitches. Make certain that your stitch count has remained the same. Here I have 6 stitches. Round 3 onwards, we'll repeat round 2 until we've worked length for our strap. So it was just chain 1, turn, single crochet into all stitches. Here I've worked a length for my strap, and all I've done was repeat round 2. Now when it comes to the length of the strap, you'll need to actually fit it on by holding your edges together and then fitting it from the upper shoulder going down to see the right length as I've got it shown here. You can then fasten off, leaving behind a slightly longer tail end to help with the seaming. Using your yarn needle, you're going to seam the two ends together. So make sure that this isn't twisted. Now that we have our two panels all complete and the strap ready, we'll seam the strap to the panels. There's a portion of this bag that needs to be left unseamed, and that will be the opening of the bag if we look at it like this. So here we have our bag, and then we're going to leave a portion unseamed, and we'll seam the strap along these edges. So this would be the opening of the bag. Okay, so we'll work with one panel at a time, the right side facing out. So as you see here, it's my right sides. So seam all the way around, seaming your strap all the way around here until you get to the top edge, and you'll stop at a certain point, leaving the top edge unseamed. I've seamed on the first panel, as you see here. I've left that top edge unseamed right there. So I'll do the same for my second panel. Bring in that panel on this side, and I'll seam along, leaving the same amount of that top edge unseamed. I've seamed both panels to the strap, as you see here. I've also weaved in all my ends. And yes, that does it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for watching.